I apologize. I'm only here briefly because of another meeting I need to be at. I came simply to listen to Lee and obviously to Stephen as well in the representations that he's been making superbly in the House. But Lee, I just want to pass on a message of solidarity. That's why I'm here, as a simple act of solidarity. And what you've been able to do for us this morning and bring us up to date has demonstrated the breadth of the oppressive measures that are being used against you. But I have to say to you as well, you've also demonstrated the depth of courage that you've shown as well during this period. And I want to congratulate you for that. There have been questions asked about what is the role of the labour and trade union movement, not just in this country, but globally around this. And it is a matter of principle. It's exactly as Stephen has said, it's a deep matter of principle. And when people ask me about this, I always refer them to, there's a very small book, and it's not the Little Red Book, it's a different book. It's a book written a few centuries ago by Thomas Paine. And in the book on rights of man, sexist in these terms, but rights of humanity, if you like, he sets out what the declaration that was before the French National Assembly during the revolutionary period. And actually, it's that declaration that has inspired not just revolutionary movements, but movements for progress over the last few centuries. And let me just quote elements from that. Basically, Article 1 is that men, and it means men and women, are born and always continue free and equal in respect of their rights. Article 2, the end of all political associations, the objective, in other words, of all political associations is the preservation of the natural, imprescriptible rights of men, and these rights are liberty, security, and resistance of oppression. And it goes on, Article 10, no man, no person, ought to be molested on account of his opinions. Article 11, the unrestrained communication of thoughts and opinions being one of the most precious rights of a person. Every citizen may speak, write, and publish freely. It goes on. That's why I'm here, and that's why you have the wholehearted support, I believe, of the labour and trade union movement in this country. And that's why it behoves us, and we have a responsibility on our shoulders to do everything we possibly can in solidarity with you. And I'm really pleased to what Stephen has set out what our Labour front bench, the new leadership, has undertaken, a solid commitment to take the appropriate actions to give you that support. And we will. But it's important, and that's why I welcome the meeting today, and that's why I wanted to be here, for a brief period to listen to you and Stephen. But it is for us now to mobilise. And there are historical associations here in the labour and trade union movement that we've got to draw upon as well. And we need to remind people of our history of actually opposing what effectively are Stalinist bureaucracies. And the history of that, 1956 is the time people recall about what happened in terms of Hungary when people stood up for freedom and the Stalinist bureaucracy suppressed them. We must not allow that to happen with yourselves. But we must also find a route, and I agree with Stephen on this, we must also find a route not to allow the right to use this for their own political purposes. And we know how easy in this country the right can mobilize a xenophobia. We've seen it all too frequently, unfortunately. But we'll be able, I believe, in the path that we're trying to pursue, is demonstrate we stand with you for freedom, we stand with you for democracy. And yes, what we'll seek to do is engage and convince as best we can in terms of forming global alliances, because I think the best form of support will come from the labour and trade union movement internationally. And in that way, it avoids falling into, well, alliances with others that actually are only interested in self-interest. And it is interesting as well what you say about the relationship, particularly between finance capital and the Chinese Communist Party. And what we've got to do is expose that, because actually a lot of the alliance is literally, well, only a few miles from where I'm sitting in my constituency now in the City of London. And it's been developed in recent years intensively. So that does mean we have in this country a very specific responsibility, because exactly as Stephen set out, what's happened particularly over the last 10 years in the almost integration of British finance capital with the interests of the Chinese Communist Party. I have no illusions about that. In fact, in some of the discussions that we've been having within our movement now, I think actually it has been refreshing, because people now have actually been able to return to first principles of what do we stand for. And one of the fundamental principles we stand for is freedom and democracy, but also workers' rights as well. And I regret, exactly as you set out, Lee, the history of the undermining and the prevention of the development of workers' rights, not just under the Chinese Communist Party, but under actually British colonial rule as well. So we stand in solidarity. We'll do everything we possibly can to expose what's happening, to work with you in solidarity and take whatever appropriate action we can. Of course, as Stephen has said and demonstrated, we can use the parliamentary platform just as he has to expose that. But also, if there's other forms of action that you feel we should undertake, we will follow your advice and guidance on this, and we'll work cooperatively with you to develop an overall strategy. There's too much at stake here in terms of the long-term freedom of not just yourselves and others, but there's too much at stake as well about the future, exactly as Stephen has said, about the global relationships that have to be forged as we tackle what is effectively now not just COVID, but the existential threat of climate change. And I'm hoping in the campaigning that we can do to support you, we can demonstrate that those global relationships can be remade, and they don't really have to be remade on the basis of turning a blind eye to oppression and repression and the denial of democratic freedoms. So we're with you in solidarity, and that's why I'm here today. And you can see the breadth of solidarity that there is in our movement now, both in terms of the Labour Party and trade unions. We'll do all we can, rest assured. Solidarity.